going to start sharing my screen. So Paul and Sarah, maybe let me know that you're seeing that. Aaron, are we seeing that? Great. Right. So we should have the Miro board up. And what we're going to do as folks are coming in is I'd like to get a little bit of better sense of what folks want to talk about. In particular, which of the strategies are of really importance. So there's a poll, if folks wouldn't mind going to that menti.com, and you can use that code. Or I think you can just hold your phone up to the QR code and it will let you go to that poll. And so it's going to ask you kind of what strategies you're most interested in talking about. So just a quick reminder for folks, multimodal streets, we're really thinking about redesigning key corridors with multiple modes in mind, allowing for vehicle movement, safe people movement. Shared streets is really about creating some new types of slow shared streets in that transition zone. Non-vehicle connections, what can we do in the internal network, external network to create people, bike, and ped spaces? Transit, how do we have the best transit system and connect to Caltrain and connect to the larger region in the peninsula? And then thinking about district parking, how are we right-sizing, managing parking effectively, and where should parking go? So hopefully folks have been able to go to Menti, and we're using that code. And let's see if I can share what folks are interested in. We seeing that? Aaron, Paul, am I running things correctly here?
Yes, that's up.
All right. We'll just give that a few minutes. Curious to see where we want to spend some of our time today. And for folks who are just joining, you can go to Menti and use that code. And then, yeah, I want to open it up. Maybe give you this one more minute. And then what we're going to do is, similar to folks who were on with us last time, is you have Aaron from the city, who's a great resource, is going to help me sound smart. Paul and Sarah with the city and consultant team, and they're going to be tracking all of your verbal comments as well as the written comments in the chat. So feel free to use the chat function. We'll be throwing that up on this Miro board, as well as your verbal comments. And if you want to throw something out verbally, raise that hand, and we'll be able to call on you. So let's see, I think folks should be able to start raising their hands. And remind me again, sorry, Paul, remind me again where I call on people.
Let's see, sorry.
Maybe folks haven't raised their hand yet.
Yeah, you should be able to see their little hand kind of raised there.
Okay, let's see. I got, I don't know who exactly this is, D. Vand, but I'm gonna let you throw out your topic and conversation, and we'll get going.
Sure. Hi. My name's Dimitri Vandelis. I'm the
Hey, Dimitri.
President of the ESC Neighborhood Association. And I think some folks have some misinterpretation of the cul-de-sacs that we want to see. We're talking about partial cul-de-sacs. And I think folks need to be aware that the potential of 5,000 to 10,000 cars unleashed on our streets and through our neighborhood will create pretty much of a disaster for our community and for the ability of the kids to walk safely on the streets and to play. That's something that we're deeply, deeply concerned about. The thing that I'm also noticing is there should be focus on east-west connections, not just north-south. So there should be a thought about how to get commuters into the downtown areas. They could get to Burton Park just as easily, if not far easier than Loyola Park. because it's closer, and that feels like a bit of an omission to me.
Okay. Dimitri, maybe if I could keep you on for a second, I want to dig in a little bit on the cul-de-sac conversation. I know that's been a topic of a lot of the feedback, and you're specifically referencing kind of the neighborhood residential streets kind of to the north. And I'm wondering, just confirm that for me, and then I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to like how you're defining like a cul-de-sac and what exactly y'all are meaning by that.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of research into this and been thinking through it. But we're talking about the residential streets of McHugh and Montgomery, Cherry and Hall.
Okay.
And having some sort of partial cul-de-sac to remove the incentive for autos to cut through. Because what we're experiencing now is a significant amount of cars that speed along Old County. As soon as they see some red lights, they cut through the community, drive down Bayport, and speed through other streets to get over to Industrial, or vice versa. So that's a significant issue for us that's been getting worse and worse. And so given the amount of employment, the amount of cars on the roads, we have to do something to allow the residential streets to be still work for the residents. So that's what we're looking at. We're not proposing full cul-de-sacs. We want to allow for emergency vehicles to be able to get through and have ingress and egress. And we're not talking about blocking off East San Carlos Avenue or Branson or Terminal. Those would be what we want to do is encourage traffic, on Branson or Terminal, as opposed to encourage traffic on Cherry, for example.
Okay. Great. No, that's really helpful. Like I said, I used to live on El Camino corridor down farther south from you guys in the Palo Alto area, and definitely experienced a lot of what I think you guys are struggling and grappling with. I think as we come together with this solution set, like I mentioned, I think part of it is engineering solutions like you're talking about and thinking about these individual streets. I think what we're also, again, this group and this plan is trying to do is think farther upstream about how we can reduce that traffic flow at the source, and begin to encourage and think about safer, more multimodal modes as well. So your points are really well taken. I would also just add.
Phil,
go ahead.
Yeah. So there's one other point that I think is like really critical that we're really excited about is the potential to reuse the railroad spur. Because what folks haven't, and you need to go on to Google Maps or Google Earth to actually look at the problem domain there. Because if we want to encourage cyclists along Old County, the spur jets out into Old County Road and removes the bicycle lane. But there's a potential for reutilizing that spur, which has never been utilized, to turn that into a pedestrian and bike walkway in order to get people into the district. And that would be a fabulous way to really connect the train station with and commuters with the employment centers. And so I think not looking at that really, really seriously would be a really lost opportunity for us.
Great. Awesome feedback. Appreciate that. I'm going to move to Dimitri. Maybe I'm going to meet you, or maybe you can lower your hand. And I'm going to go to Devin, and then I have David right after Devin. I'm trying to grab you guys in order. If folks, again, use that chat function, raise your hand. We'll do our best to get to you.
All right. You read me?
Yeah. Hey, Devin.
Hey there. All right. So I'm really on a lot of the same points that were just brought up as far as the partial cul-de-sacs for, I'm a resident of Montgomery, and I got two little girls, and we've got a lot of families over here. And, it's been, yeah, as was brought up, it's been a problem for a while, and it's been increasing. And just as it was brought up, where people see red lights and they'll detour down our streets at 40, 45 miles an hour. And it's something that's, it's not a new issue, but see it becoming a larger issue. And I understand wanting to deal with the source of the issue primarily. But this is something that's already been there and will continue to be there, and will probably just get worse with more individuals commuting to and from the area.
Hey, Devin, can I pause you just real quick? Just to clarify some of that movement that you're seeing, is it folks heading southbound mostly on Industrial and then making a right onto your street, or what's kind of the typical movement you're seeing?
It's more
northbound and then left?
I would say northbound on Old County.
Northbound on Old County.
Making a right onto Montgomery and Hall and Cherry, and trying to shoot through to get down to Industrial. But it's the big clogs are at Old County and Holly. And then even just before that with the new light, it's been there for a few years. The light at East San Carlos and Old County. But down on Industrial, it's Industrial and Holly that are kind of Holly's the big plug there. And people just they don't want to, and I don't blame them. They don't want to wait for the light. But I don't appreciate them blasting down our street. So speed humps, cul-de-sac, and then us being able to retain our neighborhood as a residential neighborhood, and having, when you get over to say McHugh, right? They've got lovely trees and stuff. It's a really nice tree-lined street. When you get over to Montgomery and Hall and Cherry, and we're a little bit more barren.
Yep.
So with some of these newer, larger buildings coming in, it's not as if they're ugly buildings, but it's not necessarily something I want to see from my home.
Yeah, I think that's when I talk about kind of at the source, it's not just about the traffic, but thinking about like the street design standards that we might implement for this new district, so that when stuff comes in, it's coming in with those wide sidewalks, it's coming in with those street trees, it's coming in with those amenities that I think, really reflect, your residential community and the character of the area. So that, I think, a big part of our piece of work. I'm going to move, Devin, thanks so much.
Yeah, not a problem.
We can circle back to you if you have more comments, but I want to make sure we're hitting other folks. So I have David, and then I'm gonna butcher the name. I apologize. Anubhav is going to be next. So let's see here. David.
Hey, I raised my hand because Michael Schwartz was not able to, so I'll pass it to him. But I also want to make a comment after him, so I'll keep my hand up. You could put me at the end if you want.
Okay, I'm not seeing Michael yet.
Michael Schwartz. He said he can't raise his hand. Oh, he's raising his hand in the video.
Oh, there he is. Okay, I'll mute you, David, and I'll go to Michael, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Hey, Michael.
For some reason I can't. Yeah. For some reason I can't get a raise.
Buggy tonight. No worries.
But I've been on Zoom since 7 in the morning too. So no joke. So this is something I actually put in the chat from the last meeting, but I think if you want to talk about the flow and the circulation, one thing that really needs to happen is that you're going to need to work with, with Samtrans or with the Caltrain to help manage the flow that's going to come through Caltrain, right? I mean, there's going to be more folks coming through Caltrain, which, is great. I mean, that's what it's for. And it would reduce the car traffic, but you're also going to need to manage the parking around the Caltrain, the mass transit coming around the Caltrain, the shuttles, the Ubers, and everything else, which, I mean, as of before the COVID was a mess.
Define mess a little bit for me. Like, can you give me
well,
some
so
specifics?
there's a shuttle
East side,
pull
west
off.
side.
So there's a shuttle pull off on Old County that was supposed to be for the shuttles that go out to like Redwood Shores and whatnot.
Right, at McHugh, right?
Yeah, at
East
McHugh,
side.
and so you got you had the shuttles there, and there's probably not enough space for those shuttles, but you know, that's the space that was available. But then you've also got Uber showing up, you've got Lyft showing up, and I mean they're pulling in wherever. You've got people actually just pulling up over there because they don't feel like pulling in on the El Camino side, right? So I mean, at times we had people like literally parking in the middle of McHugh to wait for whoever it was they're waiting for, and you know that's. I mean, if there's going to be a plan to manage that, I think, you know, I mean, there's been some talk about the shuttles. The shuttles are probably an important part of that and have to be factored in, but there also has to be, you know, some really organized plan to keep them wherever they're going to go. Like some of these other stations.
Curb management plan for that area.
Sorry?
I said some type of curb management plan for that area. So just manage the curb space correctly.
Well, like, I mean, you know, in some of these other stations, like if you go down to, you know, Palo Alto or Mountain View or other places, I mean, it's all integrated into the parking lot, right? And that's where they go. I mean, it's built into the station, and that just doesn't exist here.
Yeah, it's a challenging station. I mean, we're kind of a 360, 360 station. We have access on both sides, and it becomes really complicated from just like a transit and shuttle operations perspective. If the route is all on the east side and we're trying to cross over El Camino or go under the tracks, dealing with that traffic at those lights has a real impact on transit operations and transit service. So, you know, that's kind of how the system has evolved to, you know, have most of the transit service pick up and drop off on the west side, but we're now trying to provide some of that access on the east side as well. But yeah, I hear you. It's good to hear your specifics on where some of that loading activity is happening and how we potentially need to manage that.
Yeah, well, I think it's, you know, it could potentially be accommodated on the east side in theory, but you know, that space is going to have to be created somehow.
Okay.
It's not, because it won't fit on Old County as it is, which is sort of where we are now.
Okay.
You know.
Great. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
David, I'll go back to you. And I don't know if you had other thoughts or things to add.
Sure. I don't know what is being suggested as a partial cul-de-sac, but I hope it doesn't mean blocking off the street except when an official emergency vehicle comes that someone mentioned, because that sounds like it blocks all sorts of circulation, including pedestrians and bicycles. And when you have nodal networks of sounds like you want to be a private street, which I'll also remind people these are public streets. When you have those nodes, it's just pushing the traffic to even more congestion on those main avenues where we say we want to encourage pedestrians and bikes and types of people moving, right? We want to move people. It doesn't need to be moving cars. But if you're moving all of the cars in the same place, we now say we want to move people, it's not going to achieve the goal we're saying of encouraging alternative transit. So I like to keep the streets open. And there's another note that I totally...
While you're thinking of that, I'll just jump in and offer you. So I now live in Portland, and what they did recently is they kind of have a neighborhood slow streets program where it's really targeted towards residential neighborhoods that are dealing with similar issues as you guys. And I would say it's more of a soft engineering approach where they're not putting in necessarily immovable barriers or things, but it's more around signage and different types of kind of communication to drivers about the nature of these streets. And they've shown, even without like kind of those hard barriers, they've shown to have had a great effect in kind of reducing some of that cut through traffic. So that may be something that's worth exploring. There's different types of models around kind of these slow neighborhood streets programs.
Yeah, and that reminds me of what I wanted to say. Of I think in Palo Alto in a few spots, and in Berkeley they do have kind of dead ends to cars. Sorry, my dog needs to go out. Dead ends to cars that do have a cut through for bike and pedestrian. So if there is some sort of dead ending like that,
Right.
that seems okay. And then two other points. I understand that it seems like when people hear bike and walking, they think of children, but adults can enjoy biking and walking too, and should. And that's what our cities should be designed to encourage. And and just like the separation of, I want to continue to drive my car, but I don't want other people to drive their car. I don't think that's going to get us to where we want to go. So thanks.
Great. Thanks, David. Let's go to Anubhav. I hope I've got that right.
Hey, Phil. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, no.
I just wanted to bring up the concerns of Holly Street. We live on Holly, and it currently bears the majority of brunt of traffic. Like, people are concerned about thousands. Like, we already have over 1,000 cars per morning here, and there are families living on this street. Already accidents that have been really bad. I do see a dotted arrow that actually connects the 101 pathway somewhere north of Industrial. Like, I'm not sure what that path is like and what are the kind of efforts. So we don't want Holly to be the artery to entry to San Carlos. Like, how can we make Britain Avenue the major artery? Because that has like industrial outset, which might be more suited to having cars running. There are 4 lanes on Holly currently, and like, it's almost impossible to walk, extremely dangerous and all. So with all these new offices coming in, there is the chance that the traffic might actually grow a lot. And
Right.
like, there has to be substantial effort put in to actually reduce congestion on Holly and bring it back to that residential status rather than just make it a highway.
Yeah, no, great input. Again, I'll be a broken record here on trying to turn that traffic spigot off at the source, and a lot of the things that we're trying to think about with policies and guidelines around parking and what we call transportation demand management. So different policies and incentives and programs that employers might offer to get their employees, instead of driving 5 days a week, maybe it's 4 days a week or 3 days a week. So lots of, again, this is like finding the suite of mobility solutions to try and get at all of these things that I think are manifesting as symptoms on your streets. Just to clarify, this like dash blue line that you're seeing on Holly is, I think, really trying to leverage, and Aaron, maybe help me out here, some of the potential pedestrian and non-vehicle connections to some of those some potential access ways over the highway. So that's what that's looking at.
That's right. And Phil, one thing I like to add, talking about looking at the source of traffic, is we not only have the opportunity to think through future development and transportation demand management, future development, but also existing traffic associated with existing businesses, existing office space in the area, and how do we start to coordinate, like potentially move through something like a transportation management association that coordinates commuting from all the businesses in the area, so that not only do you reduce traffic associated with new businesses and new development, but old development as well.
Yeah, great points. Thanks for bringing that up. Was there other comments you had? Maybe not. Let's see. I don't have anyone else in my queue. I'm curious if other folks have written comments or maybe, Devin, maybe you want to jump on. Before I unmute you, I'll just note that for folks help me kind of navigate some of the points that are popping up in chat. I don't know if there's things that people are seeing that are of particular interest or that folks want to talk about.
All right. Just one other thing to kind of add in on our little neighborhood over here, just southeast San Carlos, the possibility, and I can't remember if I brought it up or not, of even changing them into alternating one-way streets to maybe make it a little less inviting for some of the streets to be, accessed during some of those high commute hours. Just a small thing. everything else, I think people have made some excellent points and concerns. And I am stoked that so many people are thinking through this, not only from multiple directions, but so thoroughly. So to everybody else, thank you guys.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Let's see, and I think this was Dimitri again. So folks that haven't had a chance to jump in, please do. And I know there's a lot of questions in chat. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pull those out and answer them on the fly here, but if you have a specific one that you want me to answer, jump in and I can respond.
And Phil, we'll also be able to answer a lot of these and expand an FAQ type document based on the questions we see in the chat.
Great, David, I got you next, so hang tight.
Hi. Yeah, a couple of notes on Holly Street. Years ago, when the city expanded Holly Street to 2 lanes, which are not legal, by the way, they're not wide enough to be considered legal lanes. They cited a traffic study, and in that traffic study, it showed that there was no increase in throughput of traffic in switching to 2 lanes. They switched to 2 lanes. They looked at how much traffic was flowing, and they also measured the traffic with 1 lane. So there was no difference, because what you have are the choke points on Industrial and on Old County Road and the underpass. So that subject really needs to be brought up again. And I think Holly Street really should be restored back to 1 lane in each direction, given that that change has made no increase. It didn't help at all. So I think that's one point, and it's important that you guys are aware of that. And then so that was the main thing I wanted to bring up. And a gentleman mentioned about making things one-way streets in our neighborhood. I actually think that would encourage more traffic to cut through. Every place that I've seen where they've done that, it turns it into a vehicle first area as opposed to a pedestrian or bicycle first area. And that's all I'm going to say.
Thanks, Dimitri. I'm going to go to David. 1 second.
Hi.
Hey, David.
Great presentation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
I noticed in Palo Alto that this Marguerite shuttle system seems to be pretty effective, meeting up with every train and handles a pretty big volume. So what are the possibilities and also the constraints of a really robust shuttle system for the east side and possibly also for the downtown?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, shuttles, like I mentioned, shuttles can be really valuable in providing that first last mile connection to a major transit stop like the Caltrain station. They can also provide more of a circulation function, whether it's connecting the east side to Redwood City or another district in San Carlos. Shuttles are super expensive to operate, and you want to make sure that you're serving a market that's going to generate enough ridership, I would say, to make sure that you're getting bang for your buck. So the Marguerite is in part super successful because it has a major trip generator in Stanford University, it has those strong anchor nodes by which to generate that ridership to and from the Caltrain station. I think a big thing that we'll want to explore with the east side is a management approach and a funding approach for a shuttle system. How do we get both public and private resources to potentially provide that shuttle service? I think another thing we're going to want to think about is making sure that a shuttle service isn't duplicative of potential Samtrans improvements, so that one service isn't eating or cannibalizing the other market. And I know that Samtrans is looking at improving shuttle service on Industrial between San Carlos and Redwood City Caltrain. So that's one alternative that they're looking at the future. So there's a lot of different pieces in there. how you operate it, the size of the vehicle, who operates it. There's all sorts of different considerations. And I think I just want to make sure that we head in and the stakeholders in the city head in with eyes wide open in terms of pursuing such a strategy. Does that help?
Yeah,
it's a long-winded answer.
Yeah, and Phil, I'll also I'll add one thing to that, is that we also, San Carlos is also one of the members of commute.org that runs shuttles. So I do think that this is something we should look into. There are obviously funding constraints overall, but if we could identify, you know, what the peak hours are when people need the shuttle and also where people are coming from, I think that it could be something that works overall, but funding would be the key.
Right. So yeah, providing that connection for businesses within the district, maybe thinking a little bit broader, could the district be connected better to areas to the north or to the south?
Right.
Is there other thoughts or questions you had on that, David? That's a really good one.
I understand that the private support of the shuttle might be necessary, and it seems like the city would need to make that part of the overall plan, the development planning process, to make that one of the benefits that the developers bring to the community.
Great, thanks, David. Yeah, it's certainly on our, when we talk about transit network enhancements, this bucket that I'm talking about, shuttles would definitely fall into that, and having a good approach on shuttles is, I think, going to be really important.
Thank you.
What else? I see a lot of good notes coming up. I see our chat thing filling up. Is there some themes, Sarah, that we might want to pull out or that folks want to weigh in on? I know we've talked a lot about the residential stuff to the north of our study area, but I'm curious if folks have other thoughts on some of these other ideas. Oh, sorry. I forgot you don't have unmute privileges. Let's see. Did that work, Sarah?
Yes, that works. So I actually did put the red stars next to a couple of the comments that I saw coming up frequently.
I'm going to scan over.
Yeah, or some good questions that came up.
See, I'm digesting here. Wow, we've got a lot of good stuff. Okay, what are folks' thoughts on Old County Road as a shuttle location? I kind of explained, I think, kind of the origins of that, and I think some of the challenges of not having that direct east side connection or potential trade-offs of that. I'd be curious to hear folks' thoughts on having shuttle stop on Old County. One question for the group. I haven't heard anything about parking as well. Parking's always a big topic. Love to hear folks weigh in on that. No current space for the shuttle. What if we expanded the space?
Well, that would work.
Okay. Any other hands raised? Remember to raise your hand, and let's see, Jennifer, there you are. All right.
Yeah, I think I put this in the chat, but
okay.
I live in the neighborhood. I live on Cherry Street, and I agree that Old County, the way it's designed right now, it's not sufficient for pandemic use for shuttles and drop off and pickup. People block the road. There's no room for bicycles, or bicycles try to go around, and then it's just dangerous because then people drive really fast on that street. So, I mean, if you want it to turn into a transit center, I think it would have to be a complete redesign. Because also they have this huge barrier there. There's this huge cement thing with a pretty tree in the middle that basically blocks up the whole road. So even when I'm trying to turn left, if I'm going north on Old County and trying to turn left on Holly, I have to wait sometimes to even get into the left turn lane because there's this big, thing in the middle of the road, cement thing with a tree. So it seems like what the design of Old County has been is to prioritize bulb outs with trees over function. So I would suggest spending some thoughtful time thinking about how it's going to work and then adding in, making it.
I'm attempting to go to
that's
Google. I might kill my computer here, but is this the area you're talking about?
Yeah,
with this
see, there's
bulb
like
out?
a bulb out there with pretty trees. There's a center thing right there that's blocking the left turn lane.
Right.
All of it's blocking out bikes. So bikes have to go there. And then people pull into this area and there's enough room for like, you know, well, most of it's red. And then, you know, people pull in there in awkward ways because there's just not enough space there. So I would suggest looking at how to redesign that if we're really trying to turn it into something that's usable.
Yeah, and you're saying, when you say people, it's, you know, right now it's a designated, I believe it's designated shuttle stop, but you're saying just vehicles, potentially Ubers and Lyfts are pulling in there. We're getting a lot of like double parking in the lane here. Is that what's going on?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I muted myself and I couldn't.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. People, Ubers, Lyfts, I don't know, just people dropping off like their child to take Caltrain to their school or whatever they're doing, you know, just community use.
Right, and I think, you know, the challenge that there's a challenge, right, in getting onto the west side and using the main kind of entrance, so to speak, of San Carlos. You know, if you waited through the lights, right, you're 10, 15, potentially 20 minutes at peak hour, right? And, you know, people in a car don't want to do that. If you're on a shuttle and trying to get to the front side, it makes that shuttle trip that much less attractive, right? So I think,
well, yeah, and then also
definitely
sorry,
trying to voice, kind of be the devil's advocate around why this stop emerged, and I think some of the trade-offs, but, you know, as we look at its location.
Yeah, and then also another piece, somebody earlier said, like, look about like east-west movement, not just over to Loyola Park, which I agree with them. Like getting over to Burton Park is just as far probably from that new development where the Kelly Moore is that they're tearing down as it is to get to Loyola Park. But right now, like if I try to go to Arroyo, that little cut under, that little bridge, you know, where Arroyo is, and I try to cross the street, the last like 3 weeks that I've tried to cross the street with my children, the button doesn't even work to get us safely across the street. So like, you know, making sure that there's the infrastructure and the maintenance by the city to ensure safe access to the parks, I think is something to think about also for pedestrians and bicyclists. Because, you know, right now, I don't even think that there's safe routes in place.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. I think this is Dimitri, if I'm remembering. Feel free to jump back in.
Hi. Yeah, Phil, so I'm really deeply concerned that we're talking about increasing the number of shuttles on Old County Road. And I totally refute the idea that it's going to take 15 extra minutes to pull out of El Camino, hit a left, cut down on Britain to get to the employment center. So I just, you know, I don't think it's okay to anecdotally make statements like that when we have lived through nightmares of shuttles, operators speeding and driving down our streets, and the fact that the city has an agreement with us and Caltrain that no additional shuttles will ever be done on Old County Road on the east side. So I'm really surprised that that isn't something that you're aware of and that you're not focusing on the multimodal station, which Caltrain said would solve all the shuttle problems, and utilizing El Camino to get to the employment center. So this push on Old County, which doesn't have the infrastructure, doesn't have the space, which has a railroad spur, which evidently you guys weren't aware of as well, which eats up a lot of the lane, that's really disheartening to me. That's really, really disheartening to me. And I'm sorry to be negative about this, but that's the fact. The fact is that the city and Caltrain have agreed no additional shuttles. We worked for years to not have shuttle operators cut through our streets. I was on the committee that talked about the design for the drop-off, and I mentioned all these problems which were ignored. And so to be ignoring what I'm hoping you guys aren't going to ignore what I'm saying about Old County, because it just isn't there. What would make sense is to make the existing shuttle drop off a kiss and ride for people, and move the shuttles onto the multimodal station. That would make a lot of sense. And if you look at places like Mountain View, there's an ingress and egress on one side for the shuttles, and it's just designed that way, and it works that way. So to try to put a square peg in a round hole by forcing traffic on Old County Road, I think is a glib and not well thought out, a solution, because it appears closer on the map, but the problems with traffic and the problems with infrastructure really preclude that from being something that's usable. So I'm sorry to sound a little negative here, but I'm just surprised.
No, I'm not. The intent here is not to push a solution. I think we're throwing a lot of ideas and thoughts at the wall, and I totally appreciate and hear the feedback, and not trying to undercut or undermine the work that y'all have done in the past. I'm trying to kind of think through and articulate with you all some of the potential trade-offs. I would say that Samtrans has looked at that stop for some future service as well on the east side. But yeah, I think it's a conversation that we're going to continue to explore, and I'm hearing you loud and clear about the challenges that you guys have had.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I will say that this is a real focal point and flashpoint for the community. And we will organize against this in a significant way, just because of the problems that we have encountered. So you can't just say, hey, this is all fine, we're going to make connections and it's all going to be great for everyone because we're throwing 5,000 to 10,000 cars on your roads every day, and we'll just add 5 shuttles on Old County Road and make it impossible for bicyclists and pedestrians to walk through and all that kind of stuff. We spent government money, our taxpayer dollars, on that multimodal station, and that's where the focus should be. So sorry, I'll shut up.
No, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear, and I hope you're not coming away from my presentation that like shuttles are the answer, right? I think I was making sure that there is no silver bullet.
Yeah,
and I think we have a lot of we have a lot of questions about the viability of a shuttle service. Is there the market that's going to generate a demand to make that worthwhile, even to start with, right?
Well, the city could talk to make Alexandria pay for that. I think there are creative solutions in order to fund it. My main point is that the shuttles is the location, and that they should be considered as part of the solution for sure. Right. Just not along Old County Road. That's my main point.
Gotcha. Thanks, Dimitri. Really appreciate it. I just want to flag for folks that, Aaron, am I right? Are we making a transition to a second group?
That's right. We are.
Okay.
Dave put up a little note a few minutes ago.
So I think, and can folks do that on their own? Remind me, Paul. Remind me, Aaron.
Yep. Yeah, people should be able to go down and leave the room. You can also stay here as well. So if you are excited about this conversation and want to talk more, we'll continue it on.
Great.
And we'll probably take a little, not break, but we'll do another poll as well.
Right.
For the new group coming in.
I know we're a little bit behind, but for folks jumping in, yeah, we wanted to have you go to this menti.com and use this code 49895544, and or use your phone and use the QR code. It's just a short survey trying to gauge people's interests in these different types of improvements or strategy buckets that I previewed earlier. So I'll go to that and we can screen. You can see those live results happening. right, so if you're just joining the circulation group, we're doing a little poll, I think probably similar to what you did in the other group. Multimodal streets, again, really around designing our streets for vehicles, cars, freight, but people movement, safe people movement, thinking about transitional shared streets at the north end of that district and really slowing down vehicle movement, bike ped connections throughout the district and connecting to and from the district. Had a great vigorous discussion about transit with the last group and shuttles and how that might work and some of the challenges with that. And love to hear folks' thoughts on the best approach for parking. So I think we're all experts now. We have a fresh, clean board here. But if you want to raise your hand and or enter into the chat, we'll be grabbing that feedback.
Hey,
so I'm gonna,
Bill, can we look at those results just one more
Oh, sure.
1 second?
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then I'll go to Jennifer and then David Crabb I have next. So throw those hands up and I'll grab you. Did you get it, Paul? All right. Hey, Jennifer.
Hi again. I also put this in the chat, but I was wondering if you guys had thought about using the parking lot on the west side of the transit center and creating a pathway somewhere on that side over to the Arroyo underpass, pedestrian underpass there, because that would connect directly to the area that looks like it's being most developed. And then that would also link more easily to pick up and drop off. And, there's a better parking lot to come through right there, opposed to Old County.
No, that's great feedback. We haven't looked too much at that parking asset and the best ways to, I think, maximize it and utilize it, but that's great feedback and interesting. It gives us some more to chew on for sure.
Yeah, I mean, right now, nobody parks in it because I go on walks through it all the time. So I'm guessing that when things pick up, people will park there, but and I think Samtrans owns that, but there might, that might be a way to look at sort of a win-win for all the different things you're trying to pull off.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Good one. Let's see, David.
Yes, hi.
Hey, David.
Yeah, I want to talk about the district parking concept.
Sure.
Where would be the logical places to put 2 or 3 parking garages maybe in this area that would then reduce a lot of serious through traffic from point A to point B there? For example, something near Britain at the end of Industrial, does that make sense? And it would then take care of the high tech section, and then something at the other end. Have you thought about, some selected thoughts about where public parking was going? Because the advantage of having public parking is if we do can bring small businesses in here, in addition to who's already here, new small businesses in some of the areas that are not the big humongous biotech chunk there. If they don't have to provide on-site parking, they can, build a lot more, of their own business off of that. And that's something that we really should be promoting. So, and the other thing is, if we do district parking, how are we going to pay for it?
Great question. So yeah, I mean, we haven't identified specific locations. I think we'd love to get your guys' feedback, whether verbally or in the notes. I think the goal with a district parking program, again, is kind of this park once environment, where we can try to have good strategic nodes of both public and kind of reserve parking for businesses, their employees, customers, but also the general public, that would allow for access to the district if you need to drive, and then able to kind of distribute out from there via different modes, rather than having, individual surface parking lots for every single business. I think that's when we really run into challenges with creating kind of the land use environment, the inviting environment that I think we're trying to do in this district. So we haven't gotten to kind of specific locations. And yeah, I think, the funding piece is definitely looking at, different public-private partnerships, and trying to figure out that cost sharing agreement for sure. Is that helpful? I don't know if you have specific ideas in mind.
I don't, but it just the Sierra Club Sustainable Land Use Committee has been a long time advocating for district parking in areas in the park once, walk distances. And if we're trying to promote pedestrian pathways and so on here, that's the way to get it to happen, is you have a destination, a place to park and a destination at the other end. And so we need to kind of think about not only, well, we got a pedestrian way here, but where's it going from point A to point B, and how are people going to be moving there, and what's going to make them feel like they really want to walk it, as opposed to drive to right to their business and park under their building and never use those again.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a chicken and egg as like the land use program takes shape, as kind of the open space network takes shape. I think we begin to start to layer on some of those strategic nodes. So it's definitely like an iterative piece that I think we're going to be working on for sure. And I would just emphasize again, like a need to have like a good on-street management program in place. So I think the worst situation, right, is like employees parking on your residential streets, or employees parking on Branston or commercial all day long, right? We need a good kind of management overlay for this parking strategy as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Let's go to Tim and then Sam.
Yeah,
hey,
yeah. Thanks for having us. Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I do really want to emphasize as much non-vehicular connections as possible. And to have those set up and really work on the railroad spurs and tracks, really try to green that. Just making connections between the neighborhoods and between the developments and all that. I think that's extremely important. And also multimodal streets, so we can have bike lanes on some of these, because right now, we, as Sam mentioned earlier, some of these places are how kids get to school. One of the concerns that we've had is that the city needs to extend the East Side Connect. It was supposed to stop at Terminal, but they haven't stopped it there yet, and that's part of this plan right here. And the other thing about circulation is that it seems like you're really putting the emphasis on Industrial Road to really make that kind of, a really nice walkable area. But I feel like Old County Road is kind of getting the short end of the stick here. And I think both of them should get equal treatment for that. The last thing I'm going to say is that the parking district, please keep that as far away from the neighborhoods as possible. And please keep it as far away from Old County Road as possible. As you know, Old County Road is a 2-lane road. Industrial is a 3 to 4 lane road in a lot of areas around there. It may be that way all the way through. So the parking should in the cars and the traffic should be coming off of Industrial Road. And not off of Old County. And the very last thing is, I would like to see the shuttles taken away from Old County Road and put on the west side, but put them over by Arroyo, where there's the tunnel right there. There's plenty of room. I mean, all you need to do is make a turnout right there that you could easily make, and then have the shuttles drop off there and make a kiss and ride and all that. And then if you still want to have shuttles, put them at the multimodal station. Do not put them on Old County. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Tim. Awesome feedback. We heard some of similar feedback in the previous group about the shuttle location currently in McHugh and the problems and issues with that. The group was pretty loud and clear around that. So I think it's something we'll definitely take a closer look at. Industrial, Old County, I would just emphasize that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel entirely, right? Like, your community has done a lot of good work with the bike and pedestrian plan. Those corridors have been identified as priority corridors for bike lanes. So we're building off some of that previous community work with you all, and don't get misled by like these arrows ending here. Like, we're really trying to think of that connectivity to the broader region. So definitely a full focus on Old County, not trying to cut it short. So yeah, lots of good feedback. I'll go to Sam, and I just note that we're probably have 5 or 6 minutes. I think Dave's going to pull us back into a large group. So keep those chats coming, raise your hand, and we'll try and grab you. Hey, Sam.
think you have to unmute him, Phil.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Hey, Sam, we got you.
Hi there. Great, thank you. Just to add on to kind of what Tim was saying, the community had a chance to review the proposed draft Alexandria plans, and they showed a large parking garage right at the corner of, well, on the north of Polgus Creek, but on Old County Road. And it would have been dumping thousands of cars right onto Old County Road. That parking garage really needs to be located somewhere up closer to industrial, and then you promote walkability in the area. I do support the parking district idea. I've seen that as an economic development tool in Palo Alto and in Mountain View, and it worked real well. It was something that was, sponsored by the city. I'm not sure exactly how it was funded, if there was a special assessment district, but I think, it makes a lot of sense for a variety of reasons. I don't know that it has to be free. Those are all things that to be negotiated. I know that there's some concerns about a heat island. I don't know what can be done about a parking garage not being a heat island, but something to consider if you consider district parking. The other thing is that, if you drive in the East Bay, there are freeway off-ramps and on-ramps quite close to each other. And on the peninsula, it's about every 1.5 miles, if not 2 miles. However, Holly Street gets a lot of traffic because it's the only way to go north on Highway 101. I've been encouraging for years that there be another northbound access point to Highway 101. And if Britain can't be it because of the wetlands on the east side, then maybe it should be in Harbor, which requires San Carlos and Belmont and Redwood City and Caltrans all to work together. But if you're going to put all this new uses here and new residents and new workers, you got to give them more opportunities to be able to move around and get onto northbound 101 without just totally impacting Holly Street. It's already kind of at a significant capacity right now. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sam. Let's see. Any other folks want to raise their hand, offer feedback? Aaron, Paul, Sarah, I don't know if I'm missing something like burning hot in the chat. I don't know if there's, I'll unmute you, Sarah, if there was something potentially that you wanted to throw out.
I don't see anything. I mean, there's a lot of great comments in there. A lot of comments that have also been shared when people have spoken. For questions that come up in the chat, we are taking those down, and city staff will create or add on to the FAQ document to answer some of the questions that are in there that we haven't been able to answer over the last 30 minutes.
Great. I think we have, Sam, I see you still have your hand up. I don't know if you had another thing you wanted to jump in on. We'll let you unmute if you want. But yeah, we have a couple more minutes if folks wanted to jump in. I know we're almost out of time. I'll go to Scott.
So, Phil, one of the issues that I have is the cut through in the corporation yard. And the issue that I have is that could move thousands of people through the residential neighborhood, and the impact that would have on the single family neighborhood itself. Not that we don't welcome people walking through the neighborhood, but that could be a huge number of people and bikes, and there's going to be kids playing on these streets, hopefully. And some of the streets, in order to get there, may potentially be thoroughfares to get from Industrial Road to Old County. So now you have people and bikes going in one direction, cars going in the other direction, and small kids playing in the street. And it just would have to be done in such a way that everybody is kept safe. And, the issue of people walking from these businesses over to Loreola Park, it'd be great for them to sit down and have lunch. But Loreola Park is really a designed 13 and under park and 12 and under. And one of the issues with that is that, again, you've got a lot of kids playing in the park, and a lot of younger kids playing in the park. And now you've got a lot of people walking into the park. And how do you keep those kids safe? So, you know, this is a great idea, but unless it's done really, really well, and if something happens, it's going to be an issue that will have to be dealt with. So I just think that cut through can be done, but only after Old County Road is taken care of. And that's the issue I see right now, is that there's a lot of plan for Industrial Road, but you know, Old County Road is sort of the brother-in-law of roads compared to Industrial Road, and it doesn't get a whole lot of attention, and
needs more love.
Those places that you know is there.
Okay. No, yeah, all great points. Yeah, for sure. I think we've heard similar feedback about Old County. Lots of concerns about Old County. Sam, I'll grab you 1 second. And I really appreciate the comment about that Northwest versus East-South movement. And I think that really, it's something that we've been thinking about. How do you control and manage those crossings across streets? How are we mitigating potential conflict points with vehicles, pedestrians, where we might be introducing some movement that hadn't been there previously? So I think it's something we have an eye to. Yeah, no, really helpful comments.
I'd love to see you use the Spur and maybe even make something that goes over Old County Road so that people don't have to actually cross Old County Road with all this additional traffic on it. It's going to be difficult to cross that road. If there were actually a pedestrian bridge somewhere along there that crossed over Old County Road, wouldn't have to stop the traffic, but would still allow people to get over to the train station.
Great feedback. Sam, I think I'll grab you last one, and I think we're probably going to be wrapping it up here.
Thank you. You know, on the other map in the other room, it showed the school site proposed right at the entrance to Loreola Park. And that's been a really sore spot for the community, as well as the city council's on record opposed to the school district developing that site for a school. We'd really like to see that be some other park community use, and would really like to see in the consideration of an innovation district or some other place in the city for that school to be relocated to. But that requires some communication with the school district and some, you know, trading of lands. You know, I don't think that there's any way to do this plan without some land uses moving around somewhat. So that's going to be required one way or the other, but would hope that that school site was also part of the equation.
Yeah, I'm not the land use guy, but I certainly appreciate the comment. We captured it for sure, and we'll make sure that that gets integrated into kind of our mix of uses strategy bucket and conversation. So appreciate that, Sam.
Thank you.
Let's see. I think we're at time. So I don't know if Dave was going to bring us all back together out of the group. You're welcome to stay on a little bit longer. I can ask some more questions until Dave cuts us off. Or, you know, again, thank you for your input.
Yeah, we've got a couple minutes, Phil. I think we're doing 8:04. We'll get booted back.
Okay, so 3 minutes for, I don't know if folks have just been listening in and want to drop their 2 cents in, or there are other kind of other comments in the chat that folks wanted to weigh in on. I'll try and zoom out here. Yeah, I see someone's comment about the cut through paths. There's definitely going to be, you know, again, I think, you know, per our shuttle conversation, some of these other, you know, right now we're really at that high level concept stage. So I think there's definitely going to be a much more detailed analysis of any of these desire lines, any of these paths, and really making sure that they fit within the property approach, the sight line or the site plan development approach for any of these individual parcels. So there's definitely going to be some additional analysis on those points. Heard some good comments on parking garages and their location. A lot of great feedback on Old County Road and kind of the TLC it needs. Aaron, am I missing anything? Anything we should touch base on?
No, I think we covered a lot of good comments and questions here. And we'll make sure to answer the questions that we haven't been able to answer through the FAQ document. I think we just have a minute or two, and then they're covering 2 topics in the other room, so I think it's going a little bit longer.
Okay, no worries. Let's see.
One thing I would put a plug in for, and we'll probably talk about this, is not related to transportation and circulation. And I see a lot of the names of folks who are also participating in the housing element process. But for those who are participating here in the East Side planning process that may not be also participating in the housing element process, I encourage you to do so. They're 2 separate processes, but obviously whenever we're, San Carlos isn't that large a city. So whenever we're talking about planning processes, there's going to be some overlap between the 2. So I really encourage everyone to pay attention to the housing element process as well. The general plan housing element process.
Great. Well, David jumped in. Maybe one last question or a piece of input.
Well, since you have a minute.
Yeah.
Could you clarify a little bit what you mean by a transitional shared street? It looks like you're thinking about getting the light industrial and pedestrians and bikes and whatever. And how does this work with light industrial trucks and so on going in and out? What's your vision of a transitional shared street?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a great example, if folks want to go online or dig up a map of Northwest 13th Ave in the Pearl District in Portland, it's historically kind of industrial district that still has a lot of those uses going, but has started to integrate a greater mix. So instead of having, just traditional vehicle or truck movement, there's now, small retail, small commercial uses, and the street has been kind of redesigned to really kind of share amongst those uses and amongst those movements. So oftentimes you're getting things like curbless streets, flexible zones around, the parking zone and the curb zone being really flexible. As we showed in some of the previous illustrations, different types of kind of street alignments, and the real function is to really slow down vehicle movement, but still allow that function to happen. So you can get a little bit more of organic kind of people movement, bike movement to support kind of that mix of uses. So more active street frontages, lots of landscaping. Does that help?
It does. The image you have on the screen here, shows like a forklift and a couple other things there, and the images of a lot of the light industrial areas in the area are a lot of garages, a lot of paving, places like that, which are basically incompatible with pedestrian movement. And so that's what I was kind of concerned about, how you deal with garages and big driveways coming out and versus pedestrians trying to move up and down let alone bicycles, but just, so that was the basis of my question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think we're getting kicked out, but take a look at Northwest 13th Ave. It has some great examples. But yeah, it's using kind of that design sense to try and manage some of those movements and still allowing for some of that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks all. We're going to leave the breakout room and maybe go back together as one big